on dealing with the backlog and ensuring better flow of cases right from reporting at the police station through to conviction. And that was most pertinently highlighted in the recent rape review published by this government, with a particular focus on those victims. There's been a huge number of changes implemented by the CPS with cross-system partners to assist the criminal justice response to COVID. As I've mentioned, it includes the interim charging protocol, which is designed to be clear that the high harm crimes and COVID-related crimes, such as spitting and assaults on essential workers, are prioritised. And I believe that will be and has been an effective step forward in dealing with backlogs.
Question number 4, please, Mr. Speaker.
It is vital that children of all ages learn about our famous legal system. My office works very closely with the Department of Education to ensure that the curriculum covers a full range of important legal concepts, including fundamental rights and criminal law. My office also works very closely with members of the pro bono and public legal education committees who run programmes to engage and educate young people about the law outside of the curriculum.
Speaker, our legal system is the cornerstone of all our society. So would my right honourable friend agree that we need to work not just with schools but with voluntary organisations too to make sure young people understand not just the law and our legal process but Parliament's role in forming the law as well?
My honourable friend has put it very well. Understanding the law is vital for young people, and to this end I wholeheartedly support pro bono work as part of education and a way in which students can support their communities to understand the law, their rights and what is required of them. Mr. Speaker, when I was both training for and practising at the self-employed bar, I undertook pro bono work and also volunteered for the Free Representation Unit, and I encourage all practitioners, young and older, to maintain that very proud tradition of the bar.
Mr. Speaker, in 1975, a young man, a 17-year-old, died while on army training. He was a recent recruit. The family have never believed the account given of his death by the Ministry of Defence. In 1998, my predecessor wrote to the then Attorney General about this case. Now it appears new evidence has come forward. Will the Attorney General meet with me and some of the members of the family to discuss this in their pursuit for the truth?
Well, I want to send my condolences to the family of the Honourable Lady's constituent to which she refers, and I applaud her campaigning and her work on this issue. I don't know about it other than what she has just told me, and I'm very happy to meet with her to discuss this further.
5, please, Mr. Speaker.
I frequently meet with criminal justice partners to discuss this very important issue, criminal justice capacity since COVID-19 restrictions have been eased. And the COVID outbreak has been felt keenly by the criminal justice system. I've been very proud of the resilience that the criminal justice agencies have demonstrated. There is still more to do, but both the CPS and the SFO have been commended for their efforts in this difficult time, and I would like to take this opportunity to thank them for continuing to support the delivery of justice.
Slane Saxby.
I thank my honourable friend for her answer, and whilst I support the government's efforts to address the recovery and pay tribute to all those working hard across the country to make this happen, can my honourable friend tell me how victims are being supported so that they do not drop out of the criminal justice process due to the time lag?
Well, I meet regularly with CPS, the Director of Public Prosecutions, and CPS teams around the country. I was very pleased to meet with the CPS Southwest last year to learn more about their case progression and response to the pandemic. In February this year, the government announced an additional £40 million to support victims of crime, both during the pandemic and beyond. And throughout this period, almost £600,000 of funding has been made available to assist helpline services, and £3 million per annum has been committed to independent sexual violence advisors until 2022. I believe that reflects a comprehensive package of support put forward by this government to help build back better after the pandemic.
Navandu Mishra. If not, I wonder if the Attorney General can answer the question, as there's a link question to number 8.
And with permission, I'll join that with number 8. Any request for my advice is subject to the Law Officer's Convention, but I must make clear that the UK prides itself on its leadership within the international system and that it discharges its international obligations in good faith. We have a proud history of providing protection to those who need it in accordance with our international obligations. The Home Office's new plan for immigration is based on fairness, and the government stands by our moral and legal obligations to help innocent civilians fleeing cruelty from all over the world.
We now come to Anne McLaughlin.
Well, Mr. Speaker.
Yeah.
Anyway, speaking in the House on Tuesday, the Home Secretary's plan to literally push back migrant children and their parents arriving by boats in the Channel. The now former Justice Secretary said these actions would not even come close to breaking international law. Given the number of leading UK legal experts with no axe to grind who say the absolute opposite, can she at least reassure the House that she has not advised the Home Secretary that pushback plans would be either legal or moral?
Yeah.
The government is committed to addressing the unacceptable rise in dangerous and unnecessary small boat crossings and is continuing to explore all options available to bring the numbers down. The government's primary focus is on preventing people from entering the Channel, tackling the criminal gangs responsible and protecting lives. And as part of its ongoing operational response, the Home Office will continue to evaluate and test a range of safe and legal options for stopping small boats.
Jacob Young.
In 2020, my office received, and as the law officers, we reviewed 552 referrals under the unduly lenient sentence scheme. 97 of those were referred to the Court of Appeal. 61 sentences were increased. I was proud, personally, to present a case myself in the Court of Appeal in February this year. The victim was raped whilst in a relationship, and I was successful in increasing the sentence of the defendant. It's important that victims report these crimes, and it's important that justice is seen to be done.
Jacob Young.
Last month, Cleveland Police's former head of corporate communications, Mr. Green, pleaded guilty to making indecent images of children. The district judge gave Mr. Green a sentence that involved no jail time and a community order lasting just 24 months. This strikes me as unduly lenient sentence in any case, but given the position of trust he occupied, holding a senior position within Cleveland Police, I believe this case must be reviewed. Can I ask the Attorney General to review Mr. Green's sentence and to ensure that justice is heard for the victims of his crimes?
I want to thank my honourable friend for his tireless work on behalf of those who've been affected by cases of this nature. This case was brought to my attention by Stephen Turner, the Cleveland Crime Commissioner, and as my honourable friend will be aware, I'm only able to review sentences that fall within the unduly lenient sentence scheme. And as this case was heard at a magistrate's court, it is ineligible.
Order. We now come to the statement I now call the Prime Minister. Prime Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. With your permission, I'll make a statement about our friendship with Australia and the United States and the security of the Indo-Pacific. Yesterday, I joined President Biden and Prime Minister Morrison to create a new trilateral defence partnership between our countries known as AUKUS, A-U-K-U-S. Australia has for the first time taken the momentous decision to acquire a fleet of nuclear-powered submarines, and they've asked for our help in achieving this ambition. I'm delighted to tell the House that we've agreed to this request, and we shall place the UK's expertise in this field amassed over decades at the assistance of our Australian friends. The first task of AUKUS will now be an 18-month trilateral collaboration to determine the best way of delivering advanced nuclear submarines for Australia, emphasising, of course, that they will be powered by nuclear reactors, not armed with nuclear weapons. So the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty places no prohibition on this work. The House will understand how Australia's future possession of this capability will help to safeguard the peace and security of the Indo-Pacific. Nuclear submarines are the capital ships of our age, propelled by an inexhaustible or effectively inexhaustible source of energy, allowing them to circumnavigate the world without surfacing, deriving oxygen and fresh water from the sea around them. While on patrol, they keep silent watch over vast expanses of ocean, protecting shipping, gathering intelligence, deterring adversaries, and guarding the trade routes on which our livelihoods depend. To design, build, operate, and then safely decommission a nuclear submarine ranks among the most complex and technically demanding enterprises yet devised. Only 6 nations possess nuclear-powered submarines. And to help another country join this tiny circle is a decision of the utmost gravity, requiring perhaps the closest relationship of trust that can exist between sovereign states. I hope I speak for the House when I say that I have no hesitation about trusting Australia, a fellow maritime democracy joined to us by blood and history, which stood by Britain through 2 world wars at immense sacrifice. Today, the UK and Australia defend the same interests, promote the same values, and face the same threats. We are as closely aligned in international policy as any 2 countries in the world. And one of the great prizes of this enterprise is that Australia, the UK, and the US will become inseparable partners in a project that will last for decades, creating opportunities for still greater defence and industrial cooperation. The integrated review of foreign and defence policy described Britain's renewed focus on the Indo-Pacific, a region that is fast becoming the geopolitical centre of the world, ever more important for British trade and therefore for British jobs and British livelihoods. If there was ever any question about what global Britain's tilt towards the Indo-Pacific would mean in reality, or what capabilities we might offer, then this partnership with Australia and the US provides the answer. It amounts to a new pillar of our strategy, demonstrating Britain's generational commitment to the security of the Indo-Pacific and showing exactly how we can help one of our oldest friends to preserve regional stability. It comes after the UK's success in becoming a dialogue partner of the Association of Southeast Asian Nations and our application to join the Trans-Pacific Free Trade Area. At the same time, this project will create hundreds of highly skilled jobs across the UK, including in Scotland, the north of England, and the Midlands, reinforcing our industrial base and our national scientific expertise, exemplified by the British companies participating in this week's Defence and Security Equipment International event. A nuclear submarine programme exists within a different realm of engineering from any other marine project, requiring a mastery of disciplines ranging from propulsion to acoustics. In these fields and many others, we will have a new opportunity to strengthen Britain's position as a science and technology superpower, and by generating economies of scale, this project could reduce the cost of the next generation of nuclear submarines for the Royal Navy, helping us to renew our own capabilities. While our partnership will begin with nuclear power submarines, now that we have created AUKUS, we expect to accelerate the development of other advanced defence systems, including in cyber, artificial intelligence, quantum computing, and undersea capabilities. This partnership will open a new chapter in Britain's friendship with our closest allies. It will help to safeguard the security of the Indo-Pacific, create jobs at home, and reinforce our country's place at the leading edge of technology, and I commend this statement to the House.
I now call the Leader of the Opposition, Keir Starmer.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and can I thank the Prime Minister for an advance copy of his statement. The recent events in Afghanistan show us how precarious international stability can be. New challenges can emerge, and issues in faraway corners of the globe can quickly turn into threats at home. So Labour welcomes increased cooperation with our allies. Australia and America are two of our closest security partners, and sharing resources and intelligence with them and enhancing capabilities makes them safer, makes Britain safer, and makes the world safer. The lessons of the past few weeks is that Britain must look after our most important relationships, or our influence and security quickly decline. So, Mr. Speaker, Labour welcomes this announcement. But can I ask the Prime Minister to outline in a bit more detail what the agreement means in practice? The strategic review identified China as a systemic competitor, and China's assertiveness does pose risks to UK interests in a secure Pacific region, in stable trading environments, and in democracy and human rights. We need to deal with those risks, defend our values, and defend our interests. But the same review also rightly stated that the UK must maintain a commercial relationship with China, and we must work with them on the defining global issues of the day, like climate change and pandemic preparedness. Without diplomatic strategy and skill, those goals will come into conflict. So what plan does the Prime Minister have to ensure that this new arrangement increases rather than decreases our ability to influence China? In order to protect our security and interests, we also need to look after our broader alliances. NATO remains our most important strategic alliance. It is also the most successful. It's delivered peace and security in Europe for 3/4 of a century. And whatever the merits of an Indo-Pacific tilt, maintaining security in Europe must remain our primary objective. So can the Prime Minister guarantee that this arrangement will not see resources redirected from Europe and the High North to the Pacific? And can he guarantee that this arrangement will strengthen rather than weaken the NATO alliance, including our indispensable bilateral relationship with France? We are also in the Five Eyes intelligence sharing arrangement with Canada, New Zealand, Australia and the US, and that, of course, is vital to our security. So can the Prime Minister assure the House that this new trilateral arrangement will not weaken our intelligence capabilities by producing a two-tier Five Eyes operation? Finally, Mr. Speaker, this arrangement clearly brings potential economic opportunities for Britain. We need the well-paid, high-skilled jobs that the defence industry provides in every corner of Britain. The Prime Minister said this project will create hundreds of skilled jobs. So can the Prime Minister give more detail on what he's done to ensure that Britain gets its fair share of any contracts that come out of these arrangements? And what will he do to ensure that no region or nation in Britain misses out on any job opportunities that this arrangement may bring? Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
I thank the right honourable gentleman for his welcome of this statement and of AUKUS, and I just want to answer some of the detailed points that he made. And I think he began by asking whether it was in any sense adversarial to China and how we would manage the relationship with China. And I think it's important for the House to understand that AUKUS is not intended to be adversarial towards any other power, Mr. Speaker, but it merely reflects the close relationship that we have with the United States and with Australia, the shared values that we have, and the sheer level of trust between us. that enables us to go to this extraordinary extent of sharing nuclear technology in the way that we are proposing to do. Obviously, we also have a shared interest in promoting democracy, human rights, freedom of navigation and freedom of trade around the world. And I think that those are values and perspectives that I hope the whole House will support. And on his point about NATO, the House should be in no doubt that this government's commitment to NATO is absolutely unshakable and indeed has been strengthened by the massive commitments we've made, the biggest uplift in defence spending since the Cold War, £24 billion, 2.2% of our GDP now goes on defence spending, Mr. Speaker, and he rightly raises the question of our relationship with France. Our relationship with France, our military relationship with France, again, Mr. Speaker, is rock solid, and we stand shoulder to shoulder with the French, whether in the Sahel, where we are running a joint operation against terrorists in Mali, or whether in Estonia, where we currently we have the largest NATO operation. Now, Mr. Speaker, he asks reasonably about the jobs that this great project will unquestionably produce. What I can say is that there will be an 18-month scoping exercise to establish where the work should go between the three partners. But clearly, Mr. Speaker, there are deep pools of expertise throughout the United Kingdom, whether in Derby or Plymouth or Scotland or Barrow, Mr. Speaker. There is expertise across the United Kingdom, and I have no doubt whatever that it will bring hundreds of high-skilled, high-wage jobs of the kind that we want to see in our country and increasingly are seeing. And may I say finally, Mr. Speaker, that it is a pleasure to hear the change of heart about NATO from the right honourable gentleman. After I had to say this, Mr. Speaker, pains me though it does, after he was only recently campaigning to install a Prime Minister who actually wanted to withdraw from NATO, Mr. Speaker.
Can I now come to the Chair of the Select Committee, Tobias Elwood?
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. We must work with but stand up to China. This is about a more coordinated long-term strategy in challenging China's increasing hostile dominance in the South China Sea. But as the Prime Minister says, it's also a reminder of how we must work with alliances and rekindle an appetite to robustly defend international standards. So we cannot gloss over how bruised NATO now feels after the withdrawal from Afghanistan. I hope the Prime Minister would agree there is an opportunity for Britain to help shape Western thinking and reinvigorate international resolve in what we stand for and are willing to defend. Would he agree today that this initiative is in response to the increasing constant competition that we now face? And I hope that he now recognises our peacetime defence budget is no longer adequate, and we will soon need to increase that budget to 3% GDP if we are to contain the threats that now we face.
I thank him very much. The increase that we've seen in our defence spending is unparalleled in modern times. It's the biggest uplift since the Cold War, £24 billion. I think everybody can see the value of that and the importance of that. And this, by the way, is enabling us to take part in this historic partnership in the way that we are. And on his point about our relationship with China, I would just want to be clear with the House. Yes, it is true that this is a huge increase in the levels of trust between the US, the UK and Australia. It's a fantastic defence technology partnership that we're building. But it is, for the perspective of our friends and partners around the world, it is not actually revolutionary. We already have been cooperating over, for instance, the Collins-class submarines in Australia.
Leader of the SNP in Blackford.
Let me begin by thanking the Prime Minister for advance sight of the statement and for the briefing from the National Security Advisor that was arranged last night. Mr. Speaker, Over the course of the last number of weeks and months, we've all witnessed on the streets of Kabul the devastating consequences of failure where international cooperation falters. Deepening cooperation and advancing agreements with allies that seek to aid stability and security is an important step, especially if past mistakes are never to be repeated, and I welcome this announcement. And in particular, the recognition of the growing cyber threat in this agreement may be overdue, but it's nonetheless welcome. I would hope that the extent that this cooperation on cyber security can and will be extended to include other key allies, especially in Europe. Mr. Speaker, there are a number of points in question I would like to raise in terms of how this agreement was reached and what has been agreed. Firstly, can the Prime Minister inform us as to what discussions have been held with other NATO allies in advance of this announcement and what interaction there will be with this initiative? Were these allies informed that this agreement was being progressed at the recent G7 summit at Cornwall? Secondly, in terms of the nuclear agreements, I understand and welcome that the Australian Prime Minister has firmly ruled out that any development of any nuclear weaponry. But in terms of future obligations under nuclear non-proliferation treaties, can the Prime Minister give a cast-iron guarantee that this agreement can never be used as a stepping stone to nuclear weaponry if any future Australian administration were to change this approach? And finally, in terms of the broader geopolitical positioning that this agreement signals, a number of military experts, including the US Defence Secretary, have previously stated that the resources of allies on the European continent would be better targeted regionally rather than risk of being stretched thinly across the Pacific. With all the focus of this agreement on the Indo-Pacific, what risk are there that vigilant eyes are taken off the threats closer to home, specifically from the Putin regime in Moscow, or indeed matching up the UK and the EU strategic interest in shoring up stability and providing humanitarian assistance that is needed in parts of Africa?
Thank the right honourable gentleman for what I think was a broad welcome of this AUKUS agreement. I do think it's historic. I do think it's good for the whole of the United Kingdom. There's no conflict with NATO. NATO members obviously are fully up to speed with what is happening. There's no, in no way affects the NATO relationships, which are absolutely fundamental for our security. There is no prospect of it breaking the nuclear non-proliferation treaty, as I informed the House earlier on, and no risk at all that it will mean that the United Kingdom or any of our allies takes our eye off the ball when it comes to the threat from the Putin regime or from Russia. So I think that the House should really understand that this is an agreement, a defence technology agreement, that is very sensible given the huge geopolitical weight now that is to be found in the Indo-Pacific region. The economic growth in that area is phenomenal. The security issues there are very, very important for our country, the maintenance of trade flows, and that's why it's vital that we take part in this agreement.
Theresa May.
Mr. Speaker, my right honourable friend said yesterday that this partnership has the aim of working hand in glove to preserve security and stability in the Indo-Pacific. Can I ask my right honourable friend, what are the implications of this pact for the stance that would be taken by the United Kingdom and for its response should China attempt to invade Taiwan?
Mr. Speaker, the United Kingdom remains determined to defend international law, and that is the strong advice we would give to our friends across the world, and the strong advice that we would give to the government in Beijing.
Gavan Jones.
Can I warmly welcome this agreement? The agreement is on nuclear technology for cooperation with Australia. But can I ask the Prime Minister what other steps have been taken to develop defence partnership technology agreements with, for example, India, Japan, South Korea, Singapore and others who have a lot to offer in terms of technology which we could gain from in terms of our own defence?
Honourable, it makes a very important point, because we are currently developing partnerships around the world, including in the Indo-Pacific region, and the Future Combat Aircraft System, FCAS, is one of those things that we may wish to develop it with our Japanese friends.
Alicia Cairns.
Partnership is enormously welcome because it makes us safer, particularly in an area of the world where there are challenges to our ability to trade, secure our interests and protect our allies. Now, those who serve on our submarines do mission-critical work, but because they are our silent protectors, they are often forgotten. So will he join me in thanking them because they keep us safe every hour of every day? And will he confirm this is the first step towards further upgrading our presence in the Indo-Pacific?
I thank her very much, and yes, of course, I pay tribute to our submariners who've had a particularly difficult time, Mr. Speaker, during COVID, when the necessity of protecting submarines has been particularly acute. But her point is very good about the further steps we can take now within the context of AUKUS. This is just the beginning of collaboration on defence technology, and I've mentioned some of the areas in which we now wish to go further. Clearly, cyber, AI, undersea defences. There are many, many areas now, Mr. Speaker, where countries that have shared values, a shared belief in democracy, will want to take collaboration much further.
David.
As consistent internationalists, Mr. Speaker, Liberal Democrats welcome this enhanced cooperation with our Australian allies, especially because it's for our mutual security. Just because the Prime Minister has failed on past occasions to effectively cooperate internationally doesn't mean we won't give him credit on occasions like this. But further to his answer to the honourable gentleman, the member for North Durham, in the context of standing up for our national interest against threats, whether it's from China, Russia or elsewhere, will the Prime Minister confirm that the UK is seeking to enhance cooperation with other allies in the Indo-Pacific region, whether it's India, Japan, South Korea or others? And further to his answer, can he give rather more detail or at least commit to this House to come back with more detail?
Well, what I can tell the House, Mr. Speaker, is that, as you know, the Carrier Strike Group is now in that region, and it has been doing exercises, Mr. Speaker, with a total of 40 other countries, friends and partners around the world, from India right the way through to Japan. And we will, I'm not going to give much more detail now about FGAS, for reasons I'm sure the House will appreciate. But the UK will be developing friendships and partnerships throughout that region for the very good political, security and economic reasons that I've given the House.
John Burren.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I very much welcome this announcement from the Prime Minister. One of the reasons some of us have opposed our foreign intervention since 2003 is that we felt they acted as a distraction for many greater dangers around the world, including in Indochina. So this agreement is very welcomed. Will the Prime Minister confirm, though, the extent to which jobs and skills in this country will be reinforced, if not enhanced? For example, the 12 submarines that are presently within the French contract, are those going to be rebid for?
Mr. Speaker, I don't want to go into the details of the contracts, but the House will understand that what we are doing now is seeking with our American friends, with our Australian friends, to help the Royal Australian Navy to acquire the type of nuclear submarines that are appropriate for the current geopolitical situation that they find themselves in. And that will mean that I have absolutely no doubt that the skills, the expertise that is available in this country across the whole of the UK will be called upon extensively in order to fulfil that objective.
Janet David.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, it's important that we maintain a diplomatic dialogue with China. Without them, solving some of the world's greatest challenges, like climate change, is not achievable. So can the Prime Minister tell the House what is being done to increase our influence with China and what impact this alliance might have on COP26 negotiations later in the year?
I thank her, and I can tell her that the President-designate of COP, Alok Sharma, recently was in Beijing and had a very productive conversations with his Chinese counterparts, and we are hopeful that China will be able to go even further than their current commitment to get to net zero by 2060. And we're hoping that we'll see a very productive commitment from China.
Ruth Edwards.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I welcome the news of this partnership. Would the Prime Minister look at using it to drive forward closer working with our allies towards a more secure and resilient supply chain for digital technology, so that we can be less reliant on countries like China, which the government has quite rightly identified as a competitor in this space?
Yes, Mr. Speaker, and the opportunities are boundless, and we're building on firm foundations. It's 50 years, Mr. Speaker, since the Five Powers Defence Agreement, the oldest defence agreement in the Pacific, and colleagues will know that that is Malaysia, Singapore, Australia, New Zealand, and the UK. So there is already structures, Mr. Speaker, in that region. AUKUS adds a new structure and a deeply intensified level of cooperation on a scale that hasn't been seen before.
John Speller.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and can I warmly welcome the deepening of our defence and security relationships with our long-standing friends and allies, Australia and the United States, and also the bipartisan support for that, not only here but also in Australia as well. But at its base, mustn't this agreement ultimately be also a part of the defence not only of our interests but also of the rules-based international order, our defence of democracy and human rights, and an alliance of democracies? And does he accept that foreign aid soft power is an important component of that as well?
Yes, it certainly is, Mr. Speaker, and that's why I think the UK can be very proud of the massive commitments that we make, £10 billion this year alone in ODA spending. But I think he's absolutely right in saying that this defence agreement, this enhanced defence agreement between the UK, Australia and the US is founded on shared values.
Mark Fletcher.
Does the Prime Minister agree that this new partnership with Australia, which builds on the recently announced trade deal which will boost jobs and businesses across the country, including in the East Midlands, shows the huge opportunities available to global Britain as we look beyond our friends and allies in Europe to become a truly global power on the world stage?
Yes, Mr. Speaker, I think is the short answer to that superb question. I don't think I could have put it better myself.
Well, you'd already given it to him. Owen Thompson.
While it's reassuring that the recognition of cyber warfare is as much a part of modern conflict as troops on the ground, but the statement was a bit light on mentions of industrialised, weaponised disinformation that's caused so much damage over recent years. What reassurances can you give that cyber troops based here and in hostile states will be high on the AUKUS agenda?
Mr. Speaker, of course, the Five Eyes partnership is also of huge importance, and we share intelligence on a very, very free basis with our Five Eyes friends. But cyber and AI, all that will now be progressed within the AUKUS context as well.
Andrew Griffith.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Will the Prime Minister accept the thanks of the House in deepening collaboration with one of our longest allies for putting flesh on the bones of global Britain? And in that vein, will he join me in welcoming to London Mohammed bin Zayed to deepen further links, but also to unleash economic benefits, as well as tackle things like defence and climate change and regional instability?
Yes, Mr. Speaker, I will indeed be seeing Mohammed bin Zayed very shortly, in fact, just after I leave the House today. And I think I'm right in saying, my honourable friend, the Foreign Secretary, will correct me, I think I'm right in saying that our relationship with the Gulf states is our single fastest growing market, isn't it? That's right. It is, Mr. Speaker. So I'm sure that will be on the agenda.
Diana Johnson.
Maintaining and strengthening our alliances is now more important than ever, and I welcome today's announcement.
But can the Prime Minister explain or answer the question that my right honourable friend, the Leader of the Opposition, posed, which was how this trilateral agreement sits with our Five Eyes relationships, and that it will strengthen it and not weaken it?
It sits within the Five Eyes arrangement, because the Five Eyes arrangement obviously comprises Canada and New Zealand as well, but they, for various reasons, are not part of this very greatly intensified technological partnership. But the Five Eyes intelligence sharing partnership is of absolutely huge value to the security of the Western world, and it remains one of the pillars of our strategic defence.
Chris Locks.
Mr. Speaker, in welcoming AUKUS, which is a fantastic opportunity for new jobs and development to come to the northwest of England, does my right honourable friend agree with me that this also dovetails nicely with our ambitions towards CPTPP and shows our intent towards a stronger presence in our tilt towards the Indo-Pacific?
Yes, Mr. Speaker, and I think the whole Indo-Pacific tilt, of which this is a part, is a recognition of the fact that the CPTPP area that he talked about is a £9 trillion trade area in which the UK has an increasing diplomatic and commercial presence.
Nick Smith.
Can I welcome this statement and say China's assertiveness in the Indo-Pacific region, though, can be destabilising, particularly in the South China Sea? So can I ask the Prime Minister what support will be given to Taiwan at this typical time?
Mr. Speaker, we vindicate international law, and one of the reasons we've sent the carrier strike group to that part of the world is to make that point.
Sambrook.
Mr. Speaker, does the Prime Minister agree that this new partnership is an absolute golden opportunity for jobs across the country, including at home in the Midlands? And it not only gives people the opportunity to be able to defend our shared interests and values across the world, but also have the opportunity of a high-skilled job and the security of a pay packet.
Yes, that's exactly right, Mr. Speaker, and I thank him, because this is the UK leads the world in some of these technologies, and it is the factories that make this stuff are distributed, and the plants and the ports, the docks that make this stuff are distributed across the United Kingdom. There are opportunities for high-wage, high-skilled jobs that will last a generation and more, Mr. Speaker.
Rachel Maskell.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The human rights atrocities against the Uyghur people in China have yet to abate. They continue with such brutality. While cooperation is welcome, how will this new strategy make human rights more possible, since escalation of operations can have a chilling impact on diplomacy?
I think it's very important, Mr. Speaker, that we continue to engage with our Chinese partners, but engage very firmly on the points which we care about, whether it's human rights in Hong Kong, democracy in Hong Kong, or the treatment of the Uyghurs. And the UK, as you know, has imposed sanctions on those who exploit forced labour in Xinjiang, and taken many other steps besides.
Craig Williams.
Speaker, for 60 years we've been manufacturing nuclear submarines, and we're a world leader, and I can confirm this is a great union story. It even finds the supply chain to the landlocked Montgomeryshire in the middle of Wales. Can I ask the Prime Minister that this, of course, security and the safety of the world is foremost, but this will be great for jobs across the United Kingdom?
I can certainly assure him that it will be great for jobs across the United Kingdom, but as I said, Mr. Speaker, there's an 18-month scoping programme to work out exactly how the labour is going to be divvied up.
Ruth Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I've listened very carefully to the statements the Prime Minister made, and he mentioned the new well-paid jobs, which of course we all welcome. And he mentioned all countries of the UK, but he didn't mention Wales. So can he tell me why Wales has been left out of this jobs fest, please?
Mr. Speaker, all parts of the United Kingdom, including the great Principality of Wales, will I have no doubt benefit from this agreement.
Steve Double.
Thank you very much,
much, Mr. Speaker. Can I welcome the Prime Minister's statement? It is right in an ever-changing geopolitical landscape that we review and, where possible, strengthen our links with like-minded countries around the world. Will he confirm that this new partnership will help us to continue to protect the rules-based international system in the region? And I'm thinking particularly with regard to Hong Kong.
I think, Mr. Speaker, what this does is allows the three countries that share very close perspectives on human rights and the rule of law and on free trade and international shipping to come together and above all to uphold our belief in democracy. And we don't wish to be adversarial towards any other global power, but we wish to underscore that we work together to uphold those values, whether in our military cooperation or in technological transfer.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. The New Zealand Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern has said that Australia's new nuclear submarine would not be allowed in its waters due to a nuclear-free policy. Under this great union, Trident nuclear submarines are forced in Scotland. Indeed, we recently read that senior MOD officials have been looking at where to base its Trident fleet when Scotland becomes independent. Although France and the US were mentioned, can the Prime Minister confirm they're not looking at the proposal of an imperial Days of Empire solution of creating a British overseas territory in Scotland?
Mr. Speaker, I think most commonsensical people will welcome the arrival of jobs across the whole of the United Kingdom, and particularly in Scotland, but where, by the way, the Type 26 frigate programme is worth 90, which I've seen being built in government, is worth £19.5 billion to this country, and like the nuclear programme, the nuclear submarine programme, will generate jobs for decades and decades to come. It's a great thing for the whole of the UK.
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister will know the glorious tourism, hospitality and history offer that Hastings and Rye has, but he may not know that we have some fantastic defence manufacturing and vacuum engineering businesses, a sector I'd like to see growing in Hastings and Rye because we really need to expand those well-paid jobs. So will he promise to consider those sort of jobs in Hastings and Rye as we move forward under this amazing partnership?
Yes, absolutely, Mr. Speaker. Of course, Hastings and Rye was the last place in which this island has suffered a reverse at the hands of the French. Our relations with the French remain very, very good. But she is certainly right in what she says about the benefits that this will bring across the whole of the UK, including, I hope, to Hastings and Rye.
Matthew Pennington.
Mr. Speaker, in light of the strategic challenge posed by an increasingly assertive China, I very much welcome this development, but the Prime Minister will be aware of the sensitivities in relation to the timing of the announcement, given the launch of the EU's Indo-Pacific strategy today. So what further reassurance can he provide that the new partnership will not come at the expense of defence cooperation with our European NATO allies?
There's no. This is not zero sum. I've spoken to the House already about the depth of our cooperation with the French, which actually has a nuclear dimension as well, and whether it's in Estonia or in Mali. And I think possibly the House should know that one of the potential winners from this technological partnership is the French company Thales, which of course has many people working in this country.
Mr. Speaker, can I welcome this agreement, which shows the depth of the relationship we have with one of our oldest and closest allies. Could the Prime Minister confirm, however, that the agreement allows us to expand the agreement into even more areas for the protection of our people and those of our allies?
My honourable friend is absolutely right, Mr. Speaker, because AUKUS is a big leap forward in terms of trust. To agree to share nuclear propulsion systems is a giant step, but what it means now is that we will build on that platform to cooperate on cyber, on AI, and all the other types of technology in which it is vital that we stick together.
Wendy Chamberlain. Mr Speaker. Now, we welcome cooperation with our allies for mutual security, and we welcome coordinated action in the Indo-Pacific. But today, in relation to Hong Kong, this government has failed to uphold its duty under the Joint Declaration at a time when democratic values have effectively been snuffed out. Now, because of our special obligations to Hong Kongers, if we lead the way by implementing Magnitsky sanctions on those involved in this crackdown, then our allies will follow. So will the Prime Minister finally take meaningful action on Hong Kong?
Mr Speaker, I must say, I think most people in this country would think that was a bit bizarre. When you consider that we have not only stood up for human rights in Hong Kong, but have taken the step of welcoming the British nationals overseas. 30,000, Mr Speaker, are coming to this country, and we should be very, very proud of what we're doing to protect them and help them, and we will continue to do so.
Mr Becker.
Mr Speaker, I warmly welcome this alliance. Does my right honourable friend agree with me that this shows that we are successfully delivering the integrated review and we are deepening our foreign policy, defence and security relationships with our global allies?
Yes, Mr Speaker, and it is, and I wish to repeat that. Yet this makes visible, incarnates the Indo-Pacific tilt that we've been talking about. It's incredibly important development for our relations in the Indo-Pacific, but it in no way detracts from our commitment to the North Atlantic area, to the European theatre, and to our overall security.
Tony Lloyd. Sir.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. It is obvious that we have an interest in maintaining a peaceful region in the Indo-Pacific. So I welcome this. But can the Prime Minister make it clear? He's talked of this as being essentially about technological transfer, not about major commitment of military assets. Can he guarantee that this is where we're going, that there will be no overstretch that's involved because of this agreement today?
Yes, of course, Mr Speaker. Though I remind the House that the Carrier Strike Group is out there expressing British influence, hard power, soft power, 8,000 miles away, in a way that very few other countries can do.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. I note that our friends from New Zealand have already announced that the new submarines will be banned from their waters. But can I press my right honourable friend on the opportunities to expand this cooperation with India, which is a key strategic partner in the region?
Yes, I should just stress to the House that what New Zealand has said is their historic position. They've been in this place for 30 years or so, or more. But what he says about India is absolutely right. Again, there is a great deal of community of interests and values, and we should pursue that.
Thank you, Mr Speaker, and I'm pleased the Government recognises the importance of protecting and growing sovereign and allied strategic capability, especially given their recent attempt to hand over domestic nuclear power capability to the Chinese. Now, during the passage of the National Security and Investment Bill and the Telecom Security Bill, Labour called for just such partnerships with countries who share our values to develop key technologies such as 6G. Can the Prime Minister set out how he plans to develop further partnerships and whether European countries might be included?
Yes, Mr Speaker, we will continue to pursue that type of partnership with every other country where we think that it can be done without any threat to our critical national infrastructure, and I think that's what the House would support.
Alex Davis-Jones.
Mr Speaker, and I am pleased to hear the Prime Minister's commitment to Welsh workers that they will be eligible for these opportunities, because workers in Pontypridd have already lost their jobs at BA in Llantrisant and GE in Nangarw. So I would urge the Prime Minister to meet with the leaders of the devolved nations, because he clearly needs a constitutional lesson. Wales is not a principality, it is a country forgotten about by this Westminster government. So will he commit to meeting with them to look at contract opportunities for Welsh workers?
Mr Speaker, there will be jobs and growth across the whole of the UK as a result of this partnership, but above all as a result of the policies that this government has been pursuing, which are leading to higher wages, higher skills, which a policy that I'm afraid the Labour Party can continuously oppose.
Final question, Jim Sheldon.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can I thank the Prime Minister for his statement? The Prime Minister will know that Northern Ireland plays a very integral part in the procurement and manufacture of defence products. We have the highest tactical and scientific manufacturers. We wish to be part of that. I know the Prime Minister wishes Northern Ireland to be part of that great part of the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland better together. We need to be assured. Can the Prime Minister today in the Chamber just tell us that Northern Ireland will play their part? Thank you.
Of course, Northern Ireland will play their part in the not least in the shipbuilding strategy that will follow after the spending review, Mr. Speaker. And I should have made more of that, Mr. Speaker. And I'm delighted to say that Harland and Wolff, as I understand it, have just taken on another 1,000 apprentices for the first time in a very long time to get ready for exactly that strategy.
We now come to the business statement. Leader of the House. Hello.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The business for the week commencing Monday, the 20th of September, will include Monday, the 20th of September, the consideration of a business of the House motion, followed by all stages of the Social Security Uprating of Benefits Bill, followed by a motion to approve an instruction relating to the Elections Bill. Tuesday, the 21st of September, an opposition day, the 6th allotted day, there will be a debate on a motion in the name of the official opposition. The subject is to be announced. Wednesday, the 22nd of September, the remaining stages of the Compensation, London Capital and Finance plc and Fraud Compensation Fund Bill, followed by second reading of the Subsidy Control Bill, followed by a motion to appoint an external member of the Parliamentary Works Sponsor Body. Thursday, the 23rd of September, a general debate on Baby Loss Awareness Week, followed by a motion on human rights in Kashmir. The subjects for these debates were determined by the Backbench Business Committee. At the conclusion of business on Thursday, the 23rd of September, the House will rise for the conference recess and return on Monday, the 18th of October. The provisional business for the week commencing the 18th of October will include Monday, the 18th of October, the second reading of the Judicial Review and Courts Bill.
We now come to the Shadow Leader of the House, Tanguy Dabana.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank the Leader of the House for the forthcoming business. I am glad to see him still in his place, Mr. Speaker. There were rumours that it might have been the Right Honourable Member for South Staffordshire opposite me. He has been told to shut up and go away, and I am relieved, therefore, that I don't have to spend time today explaining that I am the member for Bristol West and not the member for Ealing, Central and Acton. Perhaps I won't throw away my flashcards just yet, you never know. Mr. Speaker, this week inflation has leapt to 3.2%, the highest jump since records began in 1997, and this comes in the same week as government rammed through their Tory tax rise, hitting hard-working families. Yesterday, Mr. Speaker, they didn't even bother to turn up and vote on their cruel and callous cut to the universal credit, the biggest ever overnight cut to social security. And the Prime Minister seems to have deliberately used his reshuffle to distract from the fact that he will be taking over £1,000 from 6 million households, while meanwhile his sacked ministers take home nearly £20,000 in severance pay. Nearly half of all people receiving universal credit, Mr. Speaker, are in work. And the Work and Pensions Secretary thinks that people should just work harder to make up the difference. But from April, for every £1 that a full-time worker on universal credit earns, the government will be taking away more than 75 pence. 1 in 6 families cannot make ends meet already. And now key workers are facing a pay freeze, a personal allowance freeze, rising council tax, an unfair national insurance rise, and the price of bread and all the basics is going up. This Tory tax rise wasn't a plan last week to tackle social care or the NHS waiting list, and it still isn't a plan this week. Mr. Speaker, working people know this is because this government is not on their side. They know the government prioritises their friends over the British people. So could the Leader of the House please explain why the government is pressing ahead with this? And Mr Speaker, then there's the astronomical costs of childcare hitting working families. Yet another broken promise from this government, failing parents and children. A staggering third of all parents pay more for childcare than for their rent or mortgage. And just to let the government know, as they often seem completely ignorant about the actual cost of living, a full-time childcare place costs £14,000 a year. Now, this government says they want to help people into work, but even before the pandemic, nearly 1 million mothers wanted to work but couldn't afford to. And that's not just parents being squeezed, Mr Speaker, it's childminders, nursery workers, all the people working in childcare, 93% of whom are women. They're suffering on poverty pay after years of real terms pay cuts under successive Tory governments. The average wage in this sector is £7.42 per hour, and shamefully, 1 in 10 staff earns less than £5 an hour. The government is not on the side of parents, it's not on the side of childcare workers, and now they want to take even more money from them. This makes no sense educationally or socially or economically. Now, we had a petitions debate on this crucial issue on Monday, but will the leader make government time available for a full debate on the childcare sector? Mr Speaker, the pandemic is still raging and bereaved families are still waiting for a public inquiry so that lessons can be learned now to help now. So I ask the Leader of the House again, when will the government's COVID inquiry start? Mr Speaker, the member for Delyn has had his Conservative Party membership suspended, although only for 12 weeks. I wonder if this says something about the seriousness or lack thereof with which some people treat sexual harassment. So will this leader now finally find time for this House to debate Labour's motion, it's a motion which we first tabled back in July, to close the recall loophole and allow the people of Delyn to decide for themselves whether or not this member should continue to represent them? And finally, Mr Speaker, last week I took a tour of the basement and some of the most damaged parts of the palace. I understand that the leader also recently took this tour, so he must have now seen, like me, the high voltage electricity lines next to the gas pipes and the wiring that goes nobody knows where. So can I ask, has he now revised his previous view that restoration and renewal of this place is just, and I quote, a little bit of banging and noise? And does he now agree that we must press ahead with a full decant that we have voted for, Mr Speaker, so that we can get on with protecting this magnificent symbol of British democracy that we are so proud of, not for us, Mr Speaker, but for the British people we serve? Thank you, Mr Speaker.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. I think the Honourable Lady was ungallant in relation to my right honourable friend, the member for South Staffordshire, who has been a very hard-working and diligent public servant over many years, and that I think it is inelegant not to thank people for the service that they have provided after a reshuffle, rather than gloating. And I must confess I'm rather surprised at the Honourable Lady behaving in this way. She made some important points about inflation, but she will of course remember that monetary policy is run independently by the Bank of England, a decision taken by Gordon Brown when he was the Chancellor of the Exchequer in 1997. And the main control of inflation, therefore, rests with an independent body. But Her Majesty's government is doing its side of the bargain, though opposed by the opposition, in ensuring that fiscal policy is responsible, because the two causes of inflation are widely believed to be the connection between monetary policy and fiscal policy. One is independently determined, but Her Majesty's government has taken steps to shore up the finances of this country, and this must be correct, it must be the sensible and right thing to do, and the universal credit is a part of that, that £9 billion of additional support has been provided to people on universal credit during the course of the pandemic as exceptional support because of the circumstances that arose during the pandemic. Now, as the pandemic is ending and as the furlough scheme is ending, it is right that we return to normal. And what my right honourable friend, the Secretary of State for the Department of Work and Pensions, so rightly pointed out, that those on universal credit who have children or limited capability to work, for example through a disability, are able to earn up to £293 per month before the taper rate kicks in, rising to £515 for those who do not receive housing support. So what my right honourable friend, the Secretary of State, said is absolutely right and reasonable. Now, the Honourable Lady then moved on to the issue of children in poverty. So I can point out to her that since 2010, a period of majority Conservative government, there are 100,000 fewer children living in absolute poverty. And that is one of the successes of which this side of the House is rightly proud. There is up to £2,000 per year per child of tax-free childcare that was introduced by the Conservatives. And if the Honourable Lady wants to debate on this, well, we have given her an Opposition Day debate next week, and she may have been listening when I read it out, but in case she wasn't, let me read it out again. The subject is to be announced. Perhaps she's hinting at what the subject may be, but when time is provided for an Opposition Day debate and the Honourable Lady raises pressing issues, it seems to me that you can fit a round peg in a round hole, Mr. Speaker, and she can answer her own question. To come to the COVID inquiry, my right honourable friend, the Prime Minister, has made it clear that the inquiry will begin before the end of this parliamentary session, and this parliamentary session will run as usual, since the reforms in 2010, will run as usual until around May. So the date has already been set out. It is a pity that the Right Honourable Lady, sorry to have promoted her inadvertently, no doubt the Privy Council is merely a matter of time. The question of suspension from this House and recall is one where the government did bring forward a motion that was agreed by the Commission, supported by the chairman of the IEP, and the Honourable Lady blocked it. If she decides not to block it, it will be back on the amendment, on the order paper straight away. And the Honourable Lady Chunt has amended it. The Honourable Lady is an experienced parliamentarian, Mr. Speaker, and knows full well that amendments block when there is not time set aside for debate. So the Honourable Lady blocked it. As regards restoration and renewal, her oratory around my views is fundamentally inaccurate, Mr. Speaker. It is well recognised that work needs to be carried out, that we need to replumb, we need to rewire. We have already done a huge amount of work ensuring that the fire safety systems are improved, and we had a successful fire test earlier in this week to ensure that the structure of the building and the lives within the building are safe. This work is planned, and I am supporting it enthusiastically. But what I have said, absolutely, that's a very helpful heckle, whoever was saying asbestos. The right honourable gentleman is a great expert on this. Absolutely, asbestos is one of the key parts of this. But what I've always been opposed to is spending very large amounts of taxpayers' money. We had forecasts of £10 to £20 billion trying to turn this place into Disneyland. That I'm opposed to, that I will continue to be opposed to. We want rewiring, replumbing, the removal of asbestos, but we do not want Disneyland.
Bob Black.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I congratulate my right honourable friend on being reappointed to the role. However, we have seen some cabinet changes, and one of the most important for me is the new Secretary of State at Housing, Communities and Local Government. So could we now have an early debate on the